Yeah, g'day, I'm Jock Mackenzie. I'm the director of Mangrove Watch, and I'm here today to tell you about how great salt marshes are. So here we are today at a typical subtropical salt marsh in Moreton Bay, very similar to salt marshes up and down the east coast of Australia. And these areas here, that whilst they may not look like much, are really important areas. So salt marshes are really important for fish habitat. You may not know that about 70% of the seafood species that end up on your kitchen table for dinner spend part of their life cycle in the salt marsh. So the little nekton, the little baby fish that come up here on the high tides and hide away from predators so they can grow here and survive. Salt marshes also provide a lot of food because they're really productive. They're taking a lot of energy in from the sun and from the land. They're converting that into carbon that flows out into the estuaries where it feeds fish and other aquatic animals. So if you like fish, you like salt marsh. And then if you're concerned about climate change, then you'll also like salt marsh, because salt marsh is super carbon storage. So what it does is it takes carbon from the atmosphere, puts it into its leaf material, and because it's salty, those leaves turn over really fast. They get exported out on the tide or buried into the mud, and then it becomes stored there forever. So salt marshes are really good at trapping carbon, but also really good at storing carbon. And the other reason why salt marshes are really important is because they protect areas like Moreton Bay and the Great Barrier Reef by improving water quality. All the mud and nutrients that flows off the land gets filtered by salt marshes before it goes out and damages seagrasses and the reef. So what the vegetation out here slows water currents down and can trap up to 80% of sediment in the water column. So if you like dugongs and turtles that depend on seagrass and the reef, then you like salt marsh. And one last thing is, if you look out here, how pretty does it look? Salt marsh is just a nice place to be. They're also really important for all sorts of other animals like migratory shorebirds that come from all the way from China, spend time in the salt marshes and then move on. So without these areas, you wouldn't have nice birds, kangaroos, all sorts of creatures here. And I should also mention that salt marshes are unfortunately really threatened. That around the world, but particularly in Australia, salt marshes are becoming increasingly damaged by urban encroachment and from what people are doing. Mainly because people use the areas as a recreational ground for driving, and that really disturbs the sediment and causes damage to the vegetation. So even though salt marshes are really important, and unfortunately they're really threatened, we still don't know very much about them. That's why we need your help to monitor salt marsh ecosystems. So you can send that data into scientists like me, so we can look at what's happening around the place. What are the main drivers? What are the main aspects that relate specifically to those functions I talked about before, like the fish habitat value, carbon storage, water quality, filtration? What are the important factors there, and how are people impacting those? And what are the methods that we can use to restore the health and the function of those habitats when they're degraded? Unfortunately, there's very few people who study salt marshes, so we need your help. And you can help by getting involved in a citizen science salt marsh monitoring program, just like the one you see here.